BLUELOCK's newest new Gen 11 player, Hugo, has been living up to the title just 2 chapters in. Landing an assist in 1 chapter, winning one-on-ones, and just the eerie feeling you get from his character, you can easily see why he was chosen as one of the best players from this generation. But the question on everyone's mind about Hugo isn't any of his feats, but rather his dialogue. It's robotic, sometimes quite literally, also analytical, and also mysterious. So what exactly does Hugo's dialogue mean, especially considering his rivalry with our main boy, Isagi Yoichi? Well, from the 2 chapters we've seen from him so far, I think I've come close to solving Hugo's character. From his confusing dialogue, to his emotionless eyes, and overall belief in destiny, which not only affects Isagi Yoichi, but for the rest of the BLUELOCK versus France game. Let's start with Hugo. Now, at the time of this recording, only chapter 331 has released, so all the information for this theory is based on that. But I mean, we can get a few basic things out of the way. He is a midfielder with some pretty good abilities. His dribbling, his passing, everything is pointing towards him being one of the best midfielders we've seen. He's a very analytical player and was even reading a book before the match. Now, I don't think this was all performative. He is genuinely a player that is smart, as seen by his logical breakdown of Isagi. Hugo was able to find out Isagi's whole 2-gun volley trick, its pros and cons, its ins and outs, as well as completely shut it down using logic. I think it's very clear that Hugo is under the classification of what BLUELOCK calls a talented learner, which in a nutshell is a player that uses logical analysis skills to create plays, whereas geniuses create plays with their unique abilities. Y'all already know it by now though. So Hugo's a talented learner, and another thing we also have to keep in mind is Hugo's design, especially his hollow, almost emotionless eyes. There is no iris, almost like there is no light, as corny as it sounds. No other characters in BLUELOCK have emotionless eyes like Hugo, besides like Nagi post-elimination, so this is something unique to him. Back it up with his nonchalant personality and expressionless face even at the most exciting moments. I think this was a purposeful design choice and will make sense with the rest of the theory. Lastly, one more design choice is Hugo's number 9 jersey, which is traditionally worn by strikers, even though he is a midfielder. This is definitely another design choice with a reason behind it, and we'll get explained later on as well. Now that we've gone over the things you need to know for Hugo, we can start analyzing his dialogue, which is what we're here for, right? I think there's a few of them we can really look at. First is his impression of Isagi being unsuitable, the most famous one. This was his first appearance and a pretty bold statement to go against the main character. This gets explained by after Isagi declares he's gonna risk it all to become number 1, Hugo says he is more suitable towards being a number 2. On paper, that is some big disrespect. He pretty much walking over our main character's hopes and dreams, and part of the reason why everyone finds Hugo so interesting in both good and bad ways. But in other words, it's pretty simple what Hugo is trying to convey here. He just thinks Isagi isn't suited towards becoming the number 1 striker. That alone is pretty simple, but the reasoning behind it is what gets complicated. Why is Isagi not suitable? What makes someone suitable? And why number 2 specifically? Well, like we said earlier, we know Hugo is a very smart player who uses a lot of logic. And I think with his deductive reasoning, he believes that talented learners can never become number 1. Hugo most likely has a different impression of talented learners and geniuses compared to Isagi. Isagi thinks that they spur each other on, one isn't better than the other, but they evolve together. From our perspective, this was 100% true because Isagi was able to fight against geniuses like Rin, evolve alongside them, and also score. But in Hugo's case, he believes that only those with the most suitable abilities towards the number 1 striker role will become the number 1 striker. And of course, those that are suitable are players who are geniuses, someone that can actually create plays due to their mentality of being a genius, right? They have genetically gifted abilities and their mindset wants them to use those gifted abilities to the max. Like Nagi with trapping, and this mentality of wanting to be Isagi made him use it to the max, creating the 5-shot. I think what kind of also helped Hugo shape this mentality is the fact that he has to play with Julian Loki. He saw that genius talent up close and personal, side by side, and especially if they had a history together, which at this point we don't know of right now. But just in general, seeing Loki with Godspeed and most likely comparing that to himself, Hugo kept questioning, what makes him so different from me? Why is he better than me? And we know Hugo is a character that bases a lot off logic. So how do you use logic to explain how a genius can play like that? Well, it's just their destiny. Which ties in nicely with Hugo's second dialogue, him talking about literally that. After France takes the 1-0 lead, Hugo says, yeah, this is destiny. Another time is Hugo smokes Isagi in a one-on-one. He also fade away asks him the question, does he believe in destiny? Which came right after his dialogue of telling Isagi that he is more suitable towards number 2. Now let's analyze what Hugo means by this. Destiny is all about a predetermined outcome, predetermined future. Everything is decided already. I pretty much said the same thing 3 times, but y'all get the point. This is very important because we know that Hugo believes in destiny, as he said, this is destiny with the first goal of France. He believes in this sort of philosophy that everything is predetermined. And Hugo, with his understanding that talented learners will never be as good as geniuses, he thinks it was predetermined at birth whether who will be a genius or talented learner. It's destiny for players like Hugo or Isagi to be a talented learner because they never had the genetic talent that he thinks is superior with geniuses. Their skill ceiling or the maximum level of potential is lower than a genius's skill ceiling. They have a lot more potential because of their mentality, weapons that constantly create, whereas a talented learner can't do it like them. No matter how hard they work, no matter how hard Hugo works, even if they max out their skills, their skill ceiling will always be lower than someone like a genius. It's also the reason why everyone says Nagi has the most potential, because he has the highest skill ceiling. This is especially true for Hugo because he was probably in an environment where he had to go against the most unfair genius of all, Julian Loki with his Godspeed. I think Loki and Hugo probably played together at some point in time. We know Loki is a striker, but I think Hugo most likely played as one too, which is why he dons the number 9 jersey, traditionally worn by strikers. But as time went on, just watching it up close and just seeing the gap widen between them, he probably realized more and more it logically makes sense that someone like Loki would become number 1, whereas he would only be number 2. Loki's destiny was predetermined at birth. He had Godspeed, a massive advantage over others, and Hugo's destiny was also predetermined at birth. He never had that genetic talent like Loki. He could never get that advantage. Hugo, from his logical perspective, knows that he will never be able to beat someone like Loki. Let's break it down in anime terms with someone y'all are familiar with, Gojo Satoru. Gojo was born with the 6 eyes, and because of that, he is able to use the limitless technique. It's just in his genetics. A random jujitsu sorcerer is logically never going to be able to reach Gojo as the number 1 sorcerer, in the same way that Hugo logically believes he will never reach a genius like Loki. So according to Hugo, it is logically right, it is his destiny that him or other talented learners in general are more suitable towards the number 2 spot. We can back this up too because in the ending text for chapter 331, it says that thing called logic is what shackles his ego. Hugo's logical way of thinking holds back his ego of wanting to become the number 1, which lines up with everything we've been saying about destiny and predeterminism. Hugo has accepted his destiny, and because of that, kind of relinquished his dreams of becoming the number 1, to play second fiddle as a midfielder. Not only do I think he was originally a striker, I think he never had these emotionless, hollow eyes until he realized and gave up on his dream. Like, think about it. It must have been a hard realization that you will never reach the levels of other geniuses. Just like telling a little kid his dreams won't come true, he's gonna be more emotionless the more and more he realizes it. Playing for second place is a realization that he has to come to terms with. Sometimes there are things or people you just logically cannot ever be, and you have to gradually accept it and be okay with it. So in general, Hugo believes everything is predetermined at birth. Your potential is determined by your genetics, and talented learners are more suitable to play second fiddle to these geniuses, the true number 1s. And we can even back this up with the next chapter title. Chapter chapter 332 is titled Theory of Aptitude, the word aptitude, word for word, means a natural ability to do something, or suitability and fitness, which lines up completely with what we are saying about Hugo and his whole philosophy so far. Now, we already know he told Isagi that he is more suitable to be number 2, and I think throughout this game, Hugo is going to be playing a psychological warfare with Isagi, basically spreading his belief that Isagi is more suitable to become the number 2 because players like Loki are the number 1. As Isagi hears this from Hugo in real time, he will witness Loki's actual genius powers, since we haven't even seen him touch the ball yet, and sort of realize what Hugo is saying is true. So Hugo is going to get the better of Isagi in a psychological warfare and sort of cause a downfall for Isagi in this game, where France and Hugo specifically get into his head. And you know what else they said in this chapter? Ryo says that France's objective is trying to get into their head. So Isagi is going to have a mental struggle with that. And I mean, this propaganda, maybe some of y'all can even resonate with it. People have been saying Isagi is more suited towards a midfielder position. I know a lot of y'all maybe even agree with Hugo, but we've seen Isagi throughout the story so far, and we trust in our boy. Whenever he goes through a downfall, he adapts, he learns. I think he'll struggle more than usual this time around, but we gotta trust in our boy that he'll find a new puzzle piece. And I think this puzzle piece will be the complete opposite of Hugo's thinking and philosophy. If Hugo thinks everything is predetermined by destiny, Isagi believes that we have free will or freedom. Free will is another philosophical concept that directly clashes with the beliefs of predeterminism. Free will says that we can make choices without solely being determined by external forces or prior events. In other words, not falling for that you were meant to be number 2 at birth logic, but that we can fight against it, just like how Isagi always fights against anything. And the person I think will help Isagi figure this puzzle piece out is the freedom man himself, the person whose whole football philosophy is freedom, and someone everyone has been waiting for in this France game, Shido Ryusei. But that's gonna be a theory for next week, the Demon King and Zesty Demon team up, but in general, I think freedom or free will is gonna be Isagi's counter to Hugo. Some way, somehow, Isagi doing Isagi things will prove to Hugo that not everything is predetermined like he thinks. I also think Hugo will see Isagi not giving up, and Hugo won't understand why. Why doesn't Isagi just accept his position as the second best, like he did? Why doesn't he just become a midfielder like how Hugo did? Doesn't he see the gap too? And I think this will be a big wake-up call for Hugo and his character. Both Isagi and Hugo evolve because of this. He understands how Isagi evolving evolves others around him, like the geniuses, and sort of changes his opinion on Isagi. At the end of the day, I still think France will win this match against Japan, but it's going to be more like a won the battle but lost the war type of situation, because Isagi will have won against Hugo at the end of the day. And I think by the time we get this inevitable rematch against France, Hugo will be donning the number 9 jersey as a striker, his original position and jersey number, meaning his eyes will no longer be emotionless, as well as he's regained hope of his original dream. Alright, well, that about wraps it up for this theory. This literally took so much research, like I had to look up philosophical books on my school's publishing website to back up the evidence. So I would appreciate it if y'all would hit the subscribe button. Again, this is a theory from just 2 chapters alone, so by the next chapter, this could be completely wrong. So take it all with a grain of salt. It's just a prediction and not meant to be 100% accurate. I just think that this is the best that I can come up with given what we know. But if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Leave any thoughts you have down below on this theory, your opinions on Hugo, on his rivalry with Isagi. How will all of that go? YouTube also really thinks you'd like this video right here, so be sure to check that one out too. I appreciate y'all so much, and I'll see y'all in the next one.